Like just about any computer component nowadays, when looking for the cheapest SSDs you can find online, you get a lot of hits from these brands you've never heard of, shipping straight from China. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you tell yourself that it's too much of a risk, they're probably going to be a piece of junk. Then you Google it and you see images like this, and you settle on buying a budget SSD from a brand you trust. But I decided to give the Goldenfir SSDs from AliExpress a chance, and today I'm going to be benchmarking them and I'm going to be tearing them open as well so we can see just how bad these SSDs can be, or how good they can be. Hey everyone, this is Frank here. Welcome back to Jaeger Tech. I actually bought two 60GB Goldenfir SSDs for my own personal use because I didn't need the utmost of SSD performance, but I still wanted to run SSDs. Now I paid just over £15 for each of these, so that's a 60GB model, but they also do 120 gigs that are around the £29 mark, 240 gigs around the £44 mark, and even 480 gigs for around the £90 mark. And those are really reasonable prices for SSDs, especially now. And you can have a look at different links, even on the AliExpress website, because there are so many sellers selling them, to get the best price. That's what I did, but they all are within a few pounds of each other, so it's not a huge problem. Now, before we get into the benchmarks and the teardown, I just wanted to go over what my expectations of an SSD in this price range were, and that was sequential read and write, so those are your big multi-gigabyte files, to be around that of a really good hard drive. You know, just over 200 megabytes per second, so still substantially worse than the best SSDs. But for the 4K random read and write, so those are your small files that things like your operating system and programs are made of, where you're having to read lots of them one after another, and that's what affects boot times and program loading times. I would expect that to sit somewhere between the really bad speeds of a hard drive and the really good speeds of the best SSDs. And that would sit them in a nice niche in the market where if you want to use it in a system that would otherwise only have a hard drive, it's a really good addition and it makes them very viable for people to purchase. However, the benchmarks tell a different story. So let's move on to them quickly, shall we? First of all, I'm going to be using Crystal Diskmark to have a look at those max speeds that you can expect to get, and then also look at HD Tune to have a look at the consistency of those reads over time. And we're also going to be comparing the drive to a hard drive and a pretty good SATA SSD, so we can see just where it sits in between those two products. So first of all, this is the Crystal Diskmark run that they put on their website. This is what they're advertising the drive can do. Here is the figure that I got when I ran Crystal Diskmark. And I ran these multiple times because that figure's fucking crazy. It is double and then some, in some cases, the speed of what they're quoting it can do. I have no idea why, but it's just crazy. So let's get on to comparing it to the hard drive and the really good quality SATA SSD. So for the hard drive, I just have a Toshiba 1TB drive. It's not the best hard drive you can go out and buy, but it's pretty representative of a decent quality hard drive. The SATA SSD is a 500GB 850 EVO that is currently in my main rig, and it is representative of one of the best SATA SSDs you can buy. So we have the two ends of the spectrum there. Let's see where the Goldenfir fits in. First of all, the Crystal Diskmark scores. Now, the Goldenfir sequential read and write sit reasonably between the two drives. It pretty comfortably crushes the hard drive, but doesn't quite catch up to the 850 EVO. And that's very reasonable because in a real world situation, you aren't going to be able to cap that speed on your SSD anyway, because unless you're running a 10 gigabit network link to some massive server array that can actually push about 600 megabytes per second, you're just not going to be able to saturate that connection. And then the 4K reads compared to the good quality SSD is phenomenal. Now you have to remember that the 850 EVO in this case is actually running an operating system, so it's not quite as good as it could be, but the 4K reads on the Goldenfir are on par, if not better. This is as good as 4K reads get on a SATA SSD. It is phenomenal. I don't understand it. It's so good. And so let's go on to the HD Tune profiles. We want to see how this does as a consistent read over time. Does it stay solid? Does it dip and jump all over the place? Because that is a good mark of a pretty bad SSD controller, the thing that actually deals with all of the data moving in and out. If it's crappy, then you'll just get jumps and stutters, and you'll never really see that performance that you're looking to get. For comparison, here's a hard drive. This is the hard drive. This is what HDTune gives on a hard drive. It's not pretty. Here's what HDTune gives on the Goldenfir SSD. What? Seriously. I can't even. Here's what the HDTune gives on my NVMe 950 Pro drive. It looks remarkably like the Goldenfir's. Like, it's just, okay, it's a lot faster because it's an NVMe drive, but what the hell is going on with this SSD? This is exactly what I would expect from a budget SSD from a big brand like Crucial or Kingston or any of them. This is the sort of drive I'm seeing. It's so not shit. That's just the best way I can describe it. And when we tear it open, we figure out why its performance is so similar to those kind of SSDs. So popping it open was really easy, just 4 screws, cover lifted off, and the PCB just pulled clean out, nothing securing it, nothing really to get in our way. The black PCB was pretty cool, didn't expect that, but when we look at the controller chip, what we see is it is a Silicon Motion SM2258. Now, if you're familiar with your SSD controllers, as some people might be, that might ring a bell. And that's because it is used by Crucial in the MX500 and BX300 SSDs. And God knows who else for how many other SSDs that have a name brand logo printed on the front of them. It is legitimately a good choice for an SSD controller. Look it up. And when we look at the NAND chip, we see that it's from Micron. That's right, Micron. The people that own Crucial. This thing is literally a Crucial budget SSD with a different sticker on the front of it. It blew my mind. The reason that it is performing similar to what I would expect from a budget SSD from a big brand is because it is a budget SSD from a big brand. They just put a different sticker on the front. It's been blowing my mind the entire time I've been benchmarking it, and just... Okay, there is a catch, and we're going to get to the catch in a second, but before I do, I just wanted to say that regardless of the catch, I'm going to keep buying these. These are fantastic value for money. You're getting a legitimately good product, okay? It may not be quite the performance of like a BX300 from Crucial, which is a pretty good budget SSD, but it's almost there. It's to the point where you won't really notice the difference in normal use in terms of loading times and transfer speeds from other external hard drives and things like that. Other things are going to get in the way of that transfer speed, capping out that like 500 megabytes per second that you could otherwise see. But the catch is that I have to wonder where these things are coming from, because the smart data on one of them shows it being very old, and that is quite concerning. I've messaged the seller about this, but it's currently Chinese New Year and they're not replying, but I'll put a comment below when they do reply with their response about why the smart data is so old on this, and I have asked them to replace it for me. So I've had pretty good experiences with AliExpress sellers about things like this in the past, where a lot of the time if you can prove there's a fault over email, they won't even want you to send it back, they'll just ship you out a new one. But I'll let you know down below how this turns out. But it is concerning, because I do wonder whether I could be a random one. I can't prove any of this, guys, but it just seems a bit odd. But on the subject of customer service, I think that might be the one other thing that lets these down, because they do offer, it says on the page, 3-year warranty, but I don't know how much they are actually going to honor this warranty. In 2.5 years, if I say this is broken, is the seller even going to be around? Am I going to be able to contact them? And even if I can, are they going to honor it? I just don't know. They don't have proven customer service track records, but I think that's a reasonable risk to take with these SSDs. Maybe it's up to you. I'm going to keep using them. They get my seal of approval. I think they're fantastic value for money, but even good quality things die randomly. The one thing I would say is if you do buy these, any of them, run a smart check on them first thing that you get them. Get crystal disk info and have a look. And if it is anything other than brand new, contact the seller, try and get a refund or a replacement. That's really the best thing I can tell you. I mean, if it looks fine on crystal disk info, then I'm sure it is fine because I have no reason to doubt the quality of them. But of course, if any of that changes, I'll put it down in the description and I'll pin a comment to the top of the comment section. Speaking of the comment section, why don't you put down below what your opinions of these SSDs are? Also, if you've had any experience with some of these off-brand SSDs, please comment your experience down below. Let's try and make the comment section a source of information on these SSDs so that if you are looking to buy one, go and check out the comment section and see what everyone else has to say about them, because my word on the subject is far from the be-all and end-all. Also, consider dropping a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and please check out my channel and consider subscribing. I'm going to be bringing you a lot more content much like this one. Other than that, this has been Frank Jaeger with Jaeger Tech. Have a good one. That's right, Micron, the own Crucial. This thing's literally a BX300. Literally.